Welcome to Sidewalk Talk. I'm Maria Batt, Director of Client Relations and Design for Shovel the Sidewalk. We are a marketing firm in Buffalo, New York, specializing in building brands for small businesses and then pushing their messages out into the community through authentic storytelling. And today on Sidewalk Talk, I have actually my parents' neighbor, Keith Craigie. He is a chemical engineer in Buffalo, New York, and I babysat both of his kids while I was growing up,
That's
and now
great.
they're in grad school
Well,
and
yeah,
doing their own thing. So welcome, Keith. Thanks for taking the time today.
you're welcome.
So Keith's story is kind of interesting. Keith was kind of in a hot zone of the coronavirus in South Korea for a little bit, came home, lived through being in quarantine, and here he is to tell the tale to all of us. So Keith, what were you doing in South Korea?
So I had been asked early in the year to go over to Korea to help start up a chemical plant that we needed to set up for the customer. And it just happened to be that the startup was right around the time that the coronavirus was starting to become known to everybody. Even before I went over to Korea, I had people at work asking me, why are you doing this? Like, why would you go over there? Because there was already cases in Korea. And, and I ended up going over there on February 10th. By that time, China had had thousands and thousands of cases, and Korea's right next door. So people knew that it wouldn't be long before Korea would start to see the cases. But I did go over on February 10th, and I was there for about 2.5 weeks. I ended up leaving as it started to get really bad, and the number of cases started to explode after there was a kind of a super spreader of the coronavirus in the province of Daegu, which was about 2 or 3 hours drive from where I was in Korea.
How long were you supposed to be there for?
I was supposed to be there for about 6 weeks. So we cut the trip short out of the safety concerns with regards to the coronavirus.
And were you able to finish the job that you were there to do? Do you have plans where you have to go back to wrap it up?
Unfortunately, no, we were not able to finish the job. Um, Hope maybe I may have to go back to finish it, but it looked like the local people were able to finish the job with our remote support.
Now, I'm a graphic designer, and everybody hears about what are you, like a chemical engineer or something like that, but I don't think everybody actually knows exactly probably what it is that you do. So explain a little bit what are you doing with chemicals, Keith?
Okay, so in my particular situation, I am involved in designing plants that make hydrogen. And so I'm what they call a process engineer. I would be involved in determining what the flows and the pressures and the temperatures for each of the streams, and what kind of chemical reactions are taking place within the reactors. And we would go through the process of doing the overall design of the plant. We'd put together something called a heat mass balance, and then we can give that to people who can do the individual design of the equipment. So mine's is more of a big picture as to how the plant should work. I would be involved in writing operating manuals and conducting safety reviews. And then when the plants get ready to start up, it's very typical for the process engineer to be over there to help start the plants and actually be the ones who start them for the first time. And that was actually what took me over to Korea. We have several hydrogen plants that needed to be started up, and I was asked to go over to Korea to help start those plants up.
So at what point when you were there were they like, okay, that's it, you got to wrap everything up however best you can wrap it up and then pass it off to somebody else, I'm assuming, to manage it since you weren't going to be there?
Actually, the Koreans were not very happy that we were deciding to leave. It was our decision. Myself, I was with a team of 3 other people from the United States, and they were not happy that we were leaving, uh, because you know for them it was okay, you know, we're home. But we were really concerned, and we ended up making the case to our management that we needed to go back because we were afraid not only of potentially getting the coronavirus and then ending up being, in a hospital in Korea, or um, being quarantined somewhere within Korea, but I was also concerned about even getting a flight home. If you had remembered at that time, the major US airlines stopped flying to China when it got really bad in China. And so the Americans that were left behind were having a really difficult time. And with Korea's proximity to China, I was very concerned that I would get stranded for weeks in in Korea. So we made the decision to say, no, we're going to call this off, and we'll come back when the situation is better. And so we ended up approaching the project manager that was there and letting them know, making our case to management before getting the okay to come home.
So it's one thing to be quarantined in your home or to be sick in your own country, but to be quarantined or sick in a country that you're not familiar with, that you don't. I mean, I'm assuming are you fluent in Korean?
No, not at all. In fact, that's
No.
always a challenge, right? Because not only am I not fluent, I can't even guess what the symbols are, right? So I would have no idea. You should have seen me trying to do laundry because all the symbols were in Korean. I'm just kind of guessing. I think this bus button does what I want it to do, and there's only so much the apps can help you there. So yeah, that was also a concern of being stuck in a country if I were to come down with it, being in a hospital that was in Korea, having a hard time being able to communicate with anybody. It was just for all those reasons, we decided that it was better to get out. One of my colleagues has asthma, and had already, unfortunately, his breathing machine broke down, and he didn't have a breathing machine, and was hacking because of not having his breathing machine. And every time he was doing that, the local people were taking his temperature. He was already concerned about people wanting to quarantine him just because they didn't understand what was going on with him.
Yeah, I mean, that would have to be because you can't really explain the way you would want to somebody who doesn't speak your language that no, this happens to me all the time. I don't have my machine. Don't
Exactly.
trust me.
Yeah.
So so you guys decided to leave. Well, first of all, you know, Korea's cases spiked so fast, but the country really, I mean, in my opinion, and from what other people are saying in the news, they did a really great job responding and containing it and, flattening that curve. Um, what changes did you notice while you were down there from the time you got there to the time you left and the difference of their response and how they took action?
It's a good question. They were actually already ahead of the United States, even when we went over there. They were already, a large percentage of the people were already wearing masks, even though they only had a few cases in Korea when I went over there. In fact, at the site, it was strongly recommended that you wear masks if you were inside of the commissioning trailer or inside the control room. Later on, then the other thing that I had to do was I had to take my temperature every day and write it on a sheet, um, in case I had a fever. Once the cases did start to spike, and you're right, they really started to spike very quickly in Korea within days. Um, the last couple of days I was at the site, they were taking our temperature even as we were driving into the site. So if we had a temperature, they would not have even let me in the site at all, um, to help avoid any contact with any of the other people on the site. And then we were required to wear the masks when we were around people, which would be in the control room and in the commissioning trailer. So the company was already taking, a lot of proactive steps. But you also saw within the culture by when it really started to spike, everybody was wearing a mask. Um, just as a precaution. And one of the things that Korea did that we saw was they very quickly went to their highest level of concern, for so they could react properly, which was something that their code red type of thing, which to be honest scared us because all of a sudden they went to their highest level, but it allowed them to be able to do containment measures to try to keep the virus within the one province, the Daegu province, that the cases had really gone up very significantly, very quickly.
Now, did everybody there seem pretty compliant? Because I know one thing that you keep hearing is nobody's listening. You have to stay home. If we're going to contain this, you have to stay home. You have to listen. It is a real problem. Were they more compliant with what the government was telling them to do?
Yes. In fact, it was interesting because in general, if you saw people who did not have a mask on that was walking around public, it was usually somebody who wasn't Korean. In fact, the Americans in particular were most likely the ones that you'd see that if you saw another American, they weren't wearing the masks. Now they didn't in the area I was not quarantined, and there were I mean in the sense of we weren't told to stay home. They were just more interested in making sure that we were washing our hands, that we were wearing masks in public, and culturally they were doing that. And that was it seemed like it for them anyway. It stopped the cases only in the area that was badly hit initially, but in the other parts of Korea it wasn't so bad.
And did they have the like the reduced resources, like of shortages, like of masks or other supplies that we have here, or were they? Do you think that they were pretty ready to
They
tackle
seem to
this?
be pretty well set
Yeah.
for things like masks. In fact, I knew going over there that I was going to have to it was recommended that I wear a mask at the site. So I tried to pick up some masks here when I'm still in the Buffalo area to take over with me, just to pack, just to have something. And I had a hard time finding them here. And this was, back at the end of January. We had to go to 3 stores before we got them. But by the time I got over to Korea, it's like there were masks everywhere. So it seemed like they were better prepared in that sense of being able to have the supplies for the people, to be able to use.
So you guys decided the best course of action was to pack up and to come home. What was that process like? Because were you when you got in, did you have to get any kind of testing, or were you just ordered into, or was it a voluntary quarantine that you went into when you got home?
Yeah. So going home, once we got the approval to do so, through going through the airports were really no issue. Um, I was I was asked where I had been in Korea, but because I hadn't been in the the, the restricted areas, there was no issue for me. That was on the Korean side. I was asked those questions. When I got through on the American side, there was no issue. It was just the standard coming back into the country questions that you would get. When I got home, I was asked by my work to self quarantine because I had been in Korea. Um, not really just to stay home and work from home because I have the capability to do that, and I did. I tried and I stayed out of the public for 2 weeks as a result of doing that.
So was your because you came into contact with your family then, obviously, because you live with your son and your wife. So were
Yes,
they kind of in quarantine too then, just guilt by association?
they could not be really, but I tried to minimize being around them.
Mhm.
So as best as I could, I tried to social distance myself from my family during that time period because they I did not want to have any chance of them getting the coronavirus.
And you guys are all good.
And we're all good. Everything worked out just
Wow.
fine.
You're living to
So
tell the tale.
thankfully, yeah.
So, to me, I'm lucky enough to where I can work from home. Um, but so maybe it's for that reason that I think, us staying at home and, not being in large groups and kind of quarantining as best we can on our own isn't that big of a deal. But how was it? How was it for you? Were you okay? Were you out of your mind? How was it?
So initially it was fine because having been out of town for so many weeks, I had so much backed up at home anyway. It was
Mhm.
actually really kind of nice. As far as the work part went, it was nice because I didn't have the commute in the morning. It was a little more relaxed. But I think after doing this for 2 weeks, I just did want to get out. I wanted to go out back into public, so I felt like I was, not just a hermit. then I could be somebody who would, be able to interact again. But I patiently waited until the 2 weeks, and yeah, you're right. By the end of it, I was squirrely. Thankfully we have a pretty good backyard. I can walk around and just enjoy that. But I was ready to go back into public.
What was the first thing you wanted to do? Now we're still all kind of in a lockdown of some sense, but what was the first thing that you wanted to do as soon as you were done?
Um, Go out to eat.
Yeah.
I also teach. We teach fourth through sixth graders at our church, which I stayed away from also for the 2 weeks, and so I was looking forward to getting back to that when I was sure that I wasn't going to infect anybody, and I was able to do that for 1 week before then just the general everybody stay home orders hit.
Before you were back again.
Before I'm back in, yeah. But I'm with everybody else now. We're all going through this now.
I know. It's this very weird, we're all in this together. And it's not even just, the I'm in NT too. It's not just the North Tonawanda community. It's like the world is all in this together. We're all on some weird team right now.
That's right. That's right. But one
So,
thing, at least when I was in Korea, I didn't see any panic over buying stuff.
no.
Okay. So, when I did make some trips to the grocery store when I was there for some supplies, and best as I can tell, there were no empty shelves. Everything was there. People weren't panicking and trying to buy every last roll of toilet paper that they could find. It was actually much calmer in that setting than what I've seen when I came back to the United States.
Now, is it purely because they have more bidets than we do, or is it because they just weren't like doing the crazy panic that we all are?
I don't know. Let me put it this way: there was enough toilet paper that was there that I was at an event. Um, it was a nearby church I'd gone to. They had a dinner afterwards, and the people there were using toilet paper instead of napkins, which I thought was really kind of odd. I don't know why, but I guess it was okay culturally, but at least they had a plenty supply of them, so there wasn't a problem. They didn't have any supply problems that I came across.
Huh. So you've been here, you've been there, and you've been here. You've actually been all over the world for your work. You've
Right.
been to Germany. Where have you been?
I've been to Germany. I've been to Italy. I've been to India. I've been to China. I've been to the Netherlands. Been to Brazil, are some of the places I've been.
And with all the places that you have been, and granted, you weren't in pandemic situations every place that you went, but you certainly were able to observe other communities. How does our community, the Buffalo, the city of Good Neighbor, compare? Are we so different from everybody else, or are we pretty much all the same, just in a different zip code?
It's very similar. I will say people in Buffalo, I think, are a little friendlier.
Mhm.
Most people, when you go and you travel worldwide, aren't very friendly. And it may not be that they're not friendly, it's that the language, you never know what language somebody may speak, especially in Europe where there's so many countries nearby each other. And so people wouldn't normally just be greeting and saying hi to people and asking how they are. I see that a lot more in Buffalo than I do in any of the other countries that I would travel in. And it's not unusual for me to, try to say good morning in the local language, and a
Mhm.
person just kind of, smiling and walking on.
So what's your advice to everybody as we're trying to contain all of this? You've been in quarantine, now you're kind of in the same boat as everybody else. How can we keep our sanity?
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, people need to do what the government officials have been telling them to do. If we're gonna beat this thing, we need to try to social distance and try to do that, and stay away from people, and follow the precautions that we're been asked to do for this time being. With regards to the advice, I think for me, getting outside every once in a while, taking a walk, um, was very helpful for my sanity, and with it being nice out, you know, it's nice to be able to do that. You can still talk to people, you just need to be far enough away, right? I think being outside and talking to your neighbors has helped me a lot in getting through that. We just keep respectable distances, maybe even on the other side of the street. But it was still, I think those kind of things of being able to have those social interactions have been helpful. I also have found that just, being able to catch up on some of the stuff that I've needed to do that I've put off for so long has been wonderful. And so it's kind of putting it in perspective of just saying, hey, we're going to get through this. And if, just take advantage of the time that we have right now, because life's going to get crazy busy again very soon. And, you have an opportunity now when things are maybe a little bit more relaxed than normal. Enjoy it and just take advantage of that.
Yeah, I think that's a lesson that we're all learning right now, that it's okay to slow down. Things are going to be there tomorrow. They're going to be there the day after, and I think it's making everybody appreciate things a little bit more. Hopefully it sticks when this is all done and we all kind of keep that in mind. We keep washing our hands and we don't stop coughing into the crux of our arms so we can stay healthier for longer.
Right.
So thank you again for taking time from, Keith has an enormously huge and beautiful backyard. And right now he's working on taking cedar chips and making paths. My kids spend a good chunk of their summer back there just navigating the trails that he builds and all of the little garden statues that his wife surprises Keith with all the time, whether he wants them or not. Thanks for taking time out of that. You're definitely going to get that done in record time this year, I have a feeling.
I started earlier than ever. Yes.
So thank you. If you who's listening to or watching our podcast right now has somebody that you think has an interesting story that can either entertain us while we're all shut in or can help everybody as they're sitting at home, come on to our website, shovelthesidewalk.com, and visit the Sidewalk Talk page. We've got a form there you can fill out. You can also check out our other podcasts, or you could stream them from Spotify or wherever else it is that you stream your podcasts. So thank you again, and this has been Sidewalk Talk.